Guys, try and be as inspirational as you possibly can when you're delivering the introduction to the members. This session, you need to make sure the members feel like this matters, feel like they're part of a 7's team, part of a team that's about to walk out into the Olympics and compete for a gold medal. You need to justify why they're doing this. It's an absolutely brilliant session, but yeah, keep the energy up, try and be positive, try and know everybody's name. Okay, make that difference. So one element warm-up. We're looking for consistency and continuity through every session. So we're trying to get the same warm-up at every location, at every session. And this gives the members an opportunity to learn the warm-up, to do it each week, to get to know each other, and they get 5 or 10 minutes to talk to each other before we then move into the dynamic session. So the layout of the warm-up is 12 steps wide, 30 steps long. And every 5 steps I put down a cone. So then the actual warm-up, we do a very simple run, a dynamic stretch and an isometric stretch. So we jog through the grid and then round the edge and back in at 50%. Then you go through a dynamic stretch. So for example, a side squat where you're going sideways, deep squat, a couple of steps, squat again. Then you come back in, and then we do a hamstring stretch, which is the isometric one. So just bouncing into a hamstring and maybe accelerating off. And then the other leg, and so on. Then we come back in. So you've done your run, you've done your dynamic stretch, you've done your isometric. When you get back in, we then go back into a run, but we build it from 50% sprint to a 60% sprint. Round the edge, jog gently in. When you get in, a new dynamic stretch. So this one could be facing sideways, twisting, bouncing. And then we come back in, a new isometric stretch. So this one might be a quad stretch followed by a small acceleration and then the other leg. Then you come back in, you go back into your run. So you're now 80%, so beg your pardon, 70% sprint. We need a dynamic exercise, so maybe a walking lunge with a stretch. So first off, just stretching the hips each side, and then maybe you go into a lunge with a twist, so lunging and rotating. And then further forward, you're going lunge and lift. Back in, another isometric exercise. So this time you might do, not entirely isometric, but maybe a high kick. So just stretching the hamstrings off and kicking back to get the hip flexors, and so on. Around the edge, back in, we're now into 80%. See, 80% sprint through, new dynamic stretch. This time maybe side squats the other way, or twisting the other way, or changing directions. Back in, new isometric exercise. So this is high knee over a hurdle, for example. A couple of steps, other leg. So just trying, not necessarily isometric, but just taking it a bit more gently. Come back in, 90% sprint. Back in. This time another dynamic stretch. So this time maybe changing direction. So I'm explosive one way, explosive the other. Trying to really get the energy up for the group now. Trying to maybe push them so they can't talk quite so much. Back in, another isometric exercise. This one could be, again, actually we'll go back into a sprint. So build the sprint up to 100% sprints here, and then finish with the last rotational exercise, and so on. So you really need to get the whole body working, building an intensity, 3 or 4 sprints at the end. This whole warm-up should last about 12 minutes every single time. Then we come off, we circle the group up, we dynamic exercise, so just rotating the hips and twisting the upper body, getting low. And as you're doing that, you then come up and ask everyone to go around their names, shouting their names out, so even the new people get to know each other. And then we go into a very brief description of this week's session, and I'll be explaining each of those coming forward. Fiji 7's training is basically rugby 7's fitness, and you're working as hard as you can. I want you to imagine that you're walking into a top grade rugby tournament, and this is the type of training that reflects that. Everything in here reflects that, and I'm going to keep talking you up as you go. Okay, so here we've got the 7's high intensity interval training set. It's 7 minutes long because that reflects how long a rugby game is. You're going to ask people to run as one group, the whole group runs to the 50-metre cone back in, back out to the 30-meter cone, back in. When they get back in, you give them an exercise. It's very simple. As soon as they finish that exercise, they're back up on the toes, 50-meter cone, back in, 30-meter cone, back in, new exercise. Think on your feet, give them different exercises. Think about upper body, core and legs. We're not going to run through this now. It's pretty self-explanatory, and hopefully Alex explained it pretty well. Thanks. So this is the overhead press and clap set. This has come from a set that Linford Christie used to do. He used to have a 20-kilo barbell. He would do, I think, 20 presses, and then he would do claps for 20, and he would do 10 sets of that. We're making it much simpler. We do 10 overhead press and then 10 clap press-ups, 4 sets of that, and then you swap the person over. For the sake of this demonstration, we're going to do 5 overhead presses. So off you go, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then clap press-ups 5. If he can, he stays on the toes. If he's struggling on the toes, he can drop onto the knees. And then normal press-ups as well if they're struggling with those. But that's it. So here, this is the All Black tap tackle set. Jules is on his front. Danny is just behind him on his front as well. Jules gets to decide when to go. Jules will pop up and sprint. He's got to get past what would be the second cone, about 10 meters. He can dummy, he can do whatever he wants. Jules, can you just demonstrate this? And Danny, you try and catch him. Okay, so Danny's now trying to catch him, and Danny just got there. I think Jules just walked that in, but it's meant to be a sprint, it's meant to be fun, and it's a good, enjoyable one for the members to get involved in. They get muddy as well. This is rugby netball, letter Y. This is one of the most inclusive things that we run, great game. What we're looking to do is create as big a pitch as possible. I tend to put out a circle of cones at one end, a circle of cones at the other. People can pass in any direction. They can throw it as far as they like. Small passes tend to win the game. We want to get people working as quickly and as fast as you can. So trying to get the game working all the way down one end, and then it breaks to the other end, you need to get defenders back. It's pretty simple. The ball needs to simply be placed in the small circle that you put down as a goal. As I say, make the pitch as big as you can. It's a great fun game. So we've come to the end of the session. We're looking to do a cool down or a stretch. A cool down, you might want to do a reverse shuttle run, so you go 100% to the longest cone and then decrease in energy as you come down. Then we've hit about 55 minutes of the session. We've got a 5-minute stretch. Frankly, it doesn't have to be that good. You can explain to the members while you're stretching that actually isometric stretches are best done when their muscles are cold. I tend to just do, particularly in the winter when the ground's wet and cold, I do a quick salutation to the sun, or slow salutation to the sun, with a few extra stretches pushed in. You can do any stretch you like, but it needn't be more than about 5 minutes. As I'm going through it, I'll go through it now, but as I'm going through it, I also talk to the members about events coming up and about various things that have been good about the session, that sort of thing. So I tend to ask them to legs wide, roll forward, forehead touches the grass. Obviously, you can't get anywhere near the grass, especially if you're as inflexible as I am. Then hands hit the ground, feet go back, hips go high, chin goes low. Stretch that and hold that for longer than I'm going to do it, but not too long. Then hips go high, chin high. That's good. Then I go hips high again and just walk it back until I'm hanging again between the legs. Now I look to go wide and stretch an adductor out. And if you can push them low on that one, even better. If they're struggling with this, on one knee, leg out to the side. Then I come into the middle and the other side. All the time I'm talking to them about events coming up, what's going on at training, who's done particularly well during the session. And maybe I'll do a glute stretch as well, so bring the knee across to one hand and just drop into a glute stretch. Then the other leg, and so on. After I've done both of those, I might look into an adductor stretch, so into a one kneeling side, push the hip forward, kneeling side, hand high, and rotate away from that back leg. And again, holding for 30 seconds or so. While I'm in this position, I might go into a hamstring stretch. So that's pretty much it. Maybe finishing with a quad stretch. And I always end the sessions with getting the members as a whole group to face the sun, put their hands on the back of the head, shut the eyes, 3 or 4 long, slow, mindful breaths, just trying to bring them back into the moment, trying to take the energy, the heart rate down a bit. And then we stop if we can get them to clap, and then head home. So hopefully it's feeling really positive at the end of the session.